All right, so um, we've got a ton of research and articles here about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Seems like you're interested in more than just like Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter.
Right.
It's more about the journey, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
The path that shaped him.
It's about connecting the dots,
Right.
looking at the experiences that, shaped him,
Yeah,
not just the companies he built.
exactly. So was he always destined to be launching rockets and, all that stuff? I
Wow.
mean, get ready, because some of these early influences might surprise you.
Yeah.
Let's just say it wasn't all spaceships and electric cars from the start.
Right.
Where do we even begin with someone like Elon Musk?
Well, his story begins in Pretoria, South Africa
Okay.
in 1971,
Okay.
far from the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
We often associate with, tech giants.
Right. So no family dynasty of engineers or programmers.
Not at all.
Not exactly born with a silver spoon in his mouth, huh?
Not at all. And even his childhood wasn't a walk in the park.
Really?
It was actually a pretty tough time for him by many accounts. Yeah. And yet, despite those challenges, you see this intense curiosity running through his early life.
Right. His ability to find fascination,
Yeah.
even amidst hardship, that's a pattern you see throughout his life.
Yeah.
Almost like the tougher things got, the more driven he became.
Yeah, that makes you wonder, did those early struggles somehow fuel his ambition?
Possibly.
Did they make him more resilient, more
Yeah.
determined to prove himself?
It's certainly possible we see that resilience time and time again
Yeah.
in his later ventures.
Speaking of finding fascination, he was apparently obsessed with science fiction as a kid.
Yeah?
And not just any sci-fi hitchhiker's guide. Isaac Asimov, the heavy stuff.
The heavy stuff. And those weren't just escapist stories for him.
Right.
They presented these grand, playful visions of the future, a
Uh-huh.
universe of possibilities.
Yeah.
So perhaps that planted the seed for his own audacious ambitions.
Instead of just accepting the world as it was, he saw what it could be.
Exactly.
Right.
And then in his early 20s, he makes a huge decision. Okay.
He leaves South Africa for North America.
That leap of faith to North America, it's something many people dream of, but few actually do.
Right.
What do you think that tells us about Musk's personality?
It points to a certain fearlessness, a willingness to step outside his comfort zone
Yeah.
and pursue opportunities, even if it means starting over.
He lands at the University of Pennsylvania,
Yes.
and instead of following the typical tech bro path, he double majors in physics and economics.
It suggests a mind that's not just focused on building things, but also understanding systems markets the bigger picture.
So he had the technical chops,
Yeah.
but also the business savvy.
Right.
That brings us to his first big venture, Zip2.
Online city guides.
Okay.
Long before Google Maps dominated the scene,
Right.
he and his brother started it with very little money,
Wow.
even sleeping in the office to make it work.
The classic startup hustle story.
Yes.
And for Elon, it paid off big time.
Big time.
Compaq buys Zip2 for almost $300 million. That's not just success, it's validation.
Yeah, for someone who started with so little, that kind of win must have been incredibly affirming.
Yeah.
It proved he could build something from scratch
Uh-huh.
and make it a success.
And that early success with Zip2 gave him the resources,
Yeah.
but more importantly, the belief
The belief.
that he could tackle problems on a much grander scale.
And that's where we see a real shift.
Okay.
His next chapter isn't about building another internet company.
Right.
It's about tackling world-changing problems.
It's Tesla and SpaceX time.
Yes.
The goals he sets for these companies are mind-boggling.
Absolutely.
This is where things get really interesting.
This is where that science fiction influence comes full circle, from childhood dreams to tangible realities.
First up, Tesla. It wasn't just about making electric cars.
Right.
It was about revolutionizing the entire energy industry.
And you have to remember the context back then.
Yeah.
Sustainable energy was gaining traction,
Uh-huh.
but electric cars were far from mainstream.
So was that incredible foresight on his part?
Right.
Or was it just a lucky bet that paid off?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But he was certainly willing to invest in a future that most people couldn't even imagine.
Right.
And those early days were undeniably challenging.
Yeah, I mean, production delays, financial struggles.
Oh, absolutely.
They were on the brink of collapse multiple times, weren't they?
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people would have given up,
Right.
folded.
It's a testament to his resilience
Yeah.
and his ability to focus on the long game. He seems to have this unwavering belief that solutions are always possible,
Right.
no matter how daunting the problem.
You mentioned his work ethic.
Yeah.
Some might say it borders on obsessive.
Right.
Is that drive ultimately beneficial?
That's a good question.
Or does it come at a cost?
It certainly fueled his success,
Yeah.
but it's also led to clashes with colleagues and
Uh-huh.
concerns about burnout. So it raises the question, is there a point where ambition becomes detrimental?
All this while Tesla was struggling to get those electric cars on the road,
Yeah.
he was already launching another audacious project, SpaceX.
And this wasn't just about dipping a toe into space travel.
Right.
His goal was nothing short of making space travel affordable
Mm-hmm.
and eventually colonizing Mars.
Straight out of those science fiction novels he devoured as a kid.
I know, right?
But this time he's bringing those ideas into reality.
And they didn't just want to launch rockets. They wanted to land them back on Earth.
Oh, wow.
Like something out of a sci-fi movie
Right.
that required incredible engineering
Yeah.
and a willingness to push the boundaries of what was considered possible.
It's one thing to have grand visions.
Right.
But actually pulling them off is another story entirely.
Absolutely.
Both Tesla and SpaceX went through some truly harrowing near-death experiences.
Near death is an understatement. These weren't just minor setbacks.
Hmm.
These were moments where it all could have crumbled.
How do you even process that kind of pressure?
I don't know.
I can barely handle it when my internet goes down.
Right.
How did he navigate those crises?
He seems to have an almost superhuman ability to stay focused on the bigger picture,
Okay.
to see challenges as opportunities to learn and adapt.
But that's still pretty abstract.
Yeah.
Do we have any specific examples of how he puts that into practice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of his most well-known strategies is what he calls first principles thinking.
Go. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure.
What exactly does that mean?
It's about getting to the core of a problem,
Mm-hmm.
stripping away all the assumptions and conventional wisdom.
Okay.
Instead of asking, how is this usually done,
Right.
you ask, what are the fundamental truths here?
So instead of accepting the status quo, you challenge everything.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a great example of this is how SpaceX approached the cost of building rockets.
Those things are notoriously expensive.
Right.
Like crazy expensive.
But instead of just accepting the astronomical price tag,
Yeah.
they broke down the cost of raw materials,
Okay.
analyzed every component, and challenged the accepted cost of every step of the process.
So they basically said, forget how it's always been done.
Right.
Let's figure out how to do it better and cheaper.
Precisely. And that led to some major innovations,
Like what?
like developing reusable rocket boosters.
Wow.
This kind of thinking isn't just for rocket scientists, though.
You're saying we can all use a little first principles thinking in our lives.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool for anyone who wants to solve problems,
Mm-hmm.
innovate, and challenge the status quo no matter what field you're in.
Now, for all his success and ambition, he's also been pretty open about the personal toll it all takes.
Right.
He's talked about struggling to find balance between work and life.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of driven people can relate to,
For sure.
especially entrepreneurs.
Uh-huh.
It's easy to get consumed by work and neglect other aspects of life.
He's mentioned trying to carve out quality time with his kids, finding activities that help him recharge.
Right.
He talks about struggling to find time for his kids. I think most of us can relate to that,
Right.
even if our work isn't launching rockets.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
reminds us that even someone who seems larger than life
Uh-huh.
still faces the same human limitations,
Yeah.
and that success often comes with sacrifices.
It's a complex picture, for sure.
It is.
But what about his advice to others?
Yeah.
What does he tell people who aspire to achieve great things?
His advice is pretty consistent.
Okay.
Solve meaningful problems.
Uh-huh.
Don't be afraid to take risks.
Right.
And surround yourself with inspiring people.
Classic advice, but coming from someone who's actually walked the walk, it carries a different weight.
Exactly. It's one thing to hear these things in a motivational seminar.
Yeah.
It's another to see them embodied in someone who's built world-changing companies
Mm-hmm.
and pushed the boundaries of what's possible.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. From his unusual childhood to his early entrepreneurial ventures, the rise of Tesla and SpaceX, and even his personal philosophies.
Right.
Is there anything else we should touch on before we wrap up?
I think it's worth noting that while Tesla and SpaceX are his most well-known ventures,
Right.
he's also involved in several other projects.
Oh, really?
Neuralink, The Boring Company.
Yeah.
He seems to have this insatiable drive to tackle challenges across a wide range of fields.
And those ventures haven't been without controversy either.
Right, from his Sometimes erratic behavior on social media,
Yeah.
to concerns about the safety and ethical implications of some of his technologies.
Right.
There are plenty of criticisms leveled against him.
For sure.
It's clear that he's a polarizing figure.
So how do we make sense of it all?
Right.
Is he a visionary genius, a reckless maverick, or something in between?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's undoubtedly a complex and contradictory figure.
People either seem to love him or hate him. There's not much middle ground.
But regardless of where you stand on that spectrum,
Yeah.
it's hard to deny the impact he's had on the world.
For sure.
He's disrupted industries, advanced technologies, and sparked countless conversations about the future of humanity.
He's certainly not boring.
Not at all. Love him or hate him, he's a force to be reckoned with.
So as we try to wrap our heads around Elon Musk, what are the key takeaways for our listener?
I think the most important thing is to remember that for all his achievements and flaws, he's still human. You know?
Yeah.
He's a product of his experiences, his passions, and his choices.
Right.
And while we can learn from his successes, we also shouldn't shy away from examining his mistakes and the ethical considerations surrounding some of his work.
It's all part of the bigger picture, right?
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole person, not just the glossy magazine covers.
And it's up to each of us to decide what we take away from his story and how it informs our own understanding of innovation ambition and what it means to leave a mark on the world.
He's given us a lot to think about, that's for sure.
He has, and maybe that's the point.
Elon Musk isn't just a name, a brand, or a Twitter feed. He's a reminder that the future isn't something that just happens to us.
Right.
It's something we create through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to dream big.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype, the controversies, the memes, but when you peel all that away, what's left is a story about human ambition, about pushing boundaries, and about trying to make a dent in the universe.
And whether you admire him, criticize him, or fall somewhere in between, there's no denying that Elon Musk has made us look at the world differently.
He's challenged our assumptions about what's possible and forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our future.
And in a world that often feels stuck in its ways, that kind of disruption can be a powerful force for change.
Hey, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Elon Musk, we're left with one final provocative thought.
He's often compared to a real-life Iron Man,
Right.
the brilliant, eccentric inventor who's trying to save the world.
But is he really a hero, a villain, or something far more complex?
That's the question we leave you with.
Wow.
There's no easy answer, and that's okay, because the most important journeys are the ones that make us think, question, and ultimately define our own path forward.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.